So here we are once again, Wednesday night, 7 p.m, and it's time for Championship Rugby League with my friend, Mr. Craig Lingard. I won't ask you how you are, mate. I'll start off by offering you my sincerest condolences because I know you and John Kear had a great relationship, and it must have been a really difficult couple of days for you, mate.
Yeah, it was a shock. I found out Monday morning. I received a couple of phone calls on Monday morning, if they're asking me if I'd heard about the news, and it were a massive shock. I guess to everybody really, and particularly after listening to him on the TV on Saturday as well. It just came out of nowhere, and never nice when somebody who you know and you respect passes away. And I think John was one of them people that it was just larger than life, and you just felt like he was going to be around forever, and just a massive shock.
I mean, we'll get on to the impact he's had on your life in a minute. But for those, I mean, you're in a privileged position in the fact that you knew him and you knew him intimately well. From your perspective, talk to us about the man. How good a man was John?
Unbelievable, mate. Absolutely unbelievable. And I think he's one of them people that, I think his persona on the TV or in the media, what exactly is it? What off the field? Maybe a little bit bluer off the field and a little bit more off script as such. But just the enthusiasm that he had for the game, and then the enthusiasm that he'd have for anybody within the game, and he'd give his time to anybody to speak, and just a real genuine bloke. And like I said, how we came across on TV is how he were in real life. Just a real nice, genuine bloke.
Yeah, I mean, obviously his passion for the game of rugby league was clear for people who only had a relationship with John through a TV screen. Of course, you had a far bigger one than that. I mean, from his perspective, if you could try and sum up his love for the game, and I'm sure you can't do it justice, what would you say?
Oh, God. Yeah, I think it's difficult to put it into words, but I think for a bloke who was still coaching last year at 71 year old, to still be doing it like he was doing it at that age just shows how much he must love the game. He'd watch a game anywhere, anytime. Even when he weren't coaching, he were going off and watching games and ringing clubs up to get tickets to go and watch a game on an evening or a weekend or whatever. For somebody to have that involvement within the game, and even at his age, just to continue to have that love for the game and everything to do with the game as well, it just reflects John's career and John as a bloke as well. It's difficult to put into words about how much he loved rugby league, and I guess how much rugby league loved him.
I mean, it's mad, really, in terms of as I sit here now, some of the parallels, and not real parallels, but bear with me. So obviously, we know that John has a massive connection to Casper Tigers. As a player, of course, he was brought up not far from the ground, and of course, there's a lot of stories now that are going around in terms of him on the doing the scoreboards, etc. Of course, that was a team that you went on to coach, and then of course there's the Batley side of it. You're a legend of Batley. He comes along and he coaches Batley, and we'll get into some of these stories in a minute. And of course, you've done both sides of the coin at Batley, and then of course one of his biggest ever achievements in his coaching career, Sheffield Eagles. And where are you now? You're at Sheffield Eagles. It's quite mad, isn't it, when you just look at some of those crossovers between you and John in terms of the clubs you represented. It's almost goosebumpy, that I would have thought for you.
Yeah, it's strange. I'm almost morphing into him as well a little bit. The older I get, I think the more I'll start looking like him. But no, it's a strange one. It's like a strange comparison, and it is weird, isn't it? How there are a lot of parallels there. And if I can have anywhere near the longevity and the success that John's had, then I'll be very, very, very pleased and very, very, very happy. And it's very, very strange. Like I said, there's three clubs there that we're both, I guess, related to, and it's just them similarities, which is a bit strange.
Well, people of a certain vintage will remember an old VHS cassette, 101 Greatest Tries in a Kick, I think is what it was called. My granddad had it, and every now and again he put it on, and I'd always wait for the Mike Gregory try for obvious reasons at Wembley 1990 that happened to be on there, as well as the Ellery Hanley ones and the Fires and the rest of it. But of course, he was on that. And again, so that's quite a distinction, isn't it? That there's any of those surviving VHSs that are out there. He's 101 great tries in rugby league.
Yeah, I used to have a copy of that myself as well. And I guess even before I knew him, even before I met him, then I knew who he was.
Absolutely. With hair. I can't imagine you with hair. I need to go and look in your archive and say I've only ever known you about it. And you me as well, Touche. Well, let's get into John. Obviously, would I be right in thinking that the first real crossover that you had with John, or was it before Batley, or was it when he asked you to come and be his assistant coach at Batley?
It was at Batley. I think I retired in 2008 at Batley, and I think I was due to be coaching the Alliance team at Batley, the reserve team at Batley the following year, but the reserve team disbanded, and obviously there were no position there for me. So I left Batley, left the game for a period of time, and took sort of 6-9 months out of the game after spending 10 years playing. You want a little bit of time to yourself, and then I got back into it. I got back involved at Bradford Scholarship, doing their 15s and 16s for a couple of years. Then I moved on to Bramley Bulldogs, coaching them in the National Conference NCL. And then I got a call at the end of the first season that I'd done as head coach at Bramley from Batley to go for a meeting with John because they were looking for a new assistant coach, and I had a ride through. And I'd still not really met John at this point. I'd obviously exchanged pleasantries with him at some rugby league events and whatnot, but didn't really know him as a person. And when you're walking into a meeting with somebody like John Kear to, I guess, interview for a job that you didn't know were open, and met him at I can't remember which some hotel somewhere, and I think in just around Leeds, and had a real good sort of half an hour, 45-minute chat with him, and walked away. And then a couple of hours later, got a call saying they'd like me to come down to be his assistant coach, and that was the start of a bit of a journey for us.
Talk about get the fans on side. A Batley legend like yourself coming back to the club as an assistant, an inspired piece of work, you'd have to say. And of course, you got the gig, which is absolutely wonderful. And you'd have, you're at that point. Where were you at in your coaching career at that point?
I've just done my first head coach's role at Bramley, so that was my first sort of adult head coach's job. And I guess when you're a little bit young like that and a bit naive, you sort of think that you know everything and you're ready for the next step up. And so my first sort of step back into the semi-pro game was back with John at Batley, and it quickly materialised after the first couple of weeks working with him that I was absolutely country miles off, and it was a real sort of back down to earth of the bump moment, just realising how far off I was, because you sometimes think that you've got everything sorted and you know how you want to play the game, you know how the game's going to work, and you've got it all mapped out and it's going to work perfectly. And then myself, for the first week or two within the job at Batley, like I said, it was just a massive eye-opener for me to realise how far off I was.
So, and of course people don't know this, but we've pretty much jumped straight on because Craig's playing golf. So, we've got some time constraints this week. So these questions that I'm firing at Craig, there's been no prep. This is absolutely authentic and off the cuff, which is exactly how we like to do it. You mentioned there in terms of, you noticed within a couple of weeks you were well off. So what were you observing in John in those first few weeks that were giving you that message? What traits and what coaching were you seeing where you got that reality check?
I just think it was the attention to detail, about how much the little things mattered, about how organised he was, about how he saw certain things that you might see him yourself, but you might sort of think, well, yeah, I've seen that, but it's not important. But John would pick up on it. I remember a number of times in my first year there where he'd bring something up in a preview, and I'd actually seen the games myself and done my own previews, as John liked to get me and Mark Moxon to do, who was assistant coach at the time. And I'd see things, and I think that's not really that important in that. But then it comes to the preview, and John had put these details in his preview, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'd seen that, but it's not really that important. And the number of times that was highlighted during a game where either a team did something against us that John had brought up, or we did something against the team where it was that little bit of a weakness that were identified, where I'd maybe glossed over a little bit or thought it's not really that important in the big scheme of things. But John picked up on them little details and highlighted the little details, and it was just I guess that was my first lesson, is how important the little details are that other people might miss, they might see and recognise, but not think that they're important. And it would almost like you've got that thing at the back of your mind that you've noticed it for a reason, you've recognised it for a reason. So there's got to be some reason why you have noticed it. So make a thing of it. And John were very, very good at doing that, and very, very, very good at highlighting strengths and weaknesses of not only us but the opposition as well.
One of the things that I think even people who didn't know John but watched him do commentary and do the media side of it, I can imagine he was an exceptional communicator and man manager.
Yeah, unbelievable, mate. Unbelievable. The number of players that have played for him that would say they'd run through a brick wall for him. It could get you up for any game. It could get you up for a training session, and the success that he's had on the big occasions speaks volumes for how good he was at getting people up for big games. Anybody who's listened to him on TV knows how good of a speaker he was. Knows how much of a picture he can paint, and you'd be sat there. I weren't playing myself. I was an assistant coach, but I'm sort of stood there listening to John, getting wound up myself, thinking, yeah, we're on it today, and just how we got people to work for him, how we got people to buy in for him, and the number of messages that I've had of people throughout the game, some that I've not spoken to for several years, which is what happens in rugby league. You don't lose contact with people deliberately, just people go different ways. But the number of people that have contacted me about John and about the experiences they had with John, how upset they are about it, just speaks volumes for how much of an impact he had on people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I can imagine that he had a bit of. I mean, he always come across on the TV as somebody who was. As the wife said, he always came across as someone she'd want to cuddle. Something tells me that might not have been the case in dressing rooms over the years. I could imagine John had bite when needed.
Oh yeah, 100%. The biggest one I saw, and we see the video of it all the time. Sean Ainscoe at the way at Featherstone, where the Uta goes and he just boots it straight up in the air, thinking the game's over. Featherstone get the ball score in the corner. I think it's Paul Sykes kicks the goal from the touchline to win the game, and the reaction of John in that changing rooms afterwards is something that I'll never forget. And I wanted to be as far away from him as I possibly could be. And I think I put as much distance between myself and John, get out of any sort of firing line, because he weren't an happy bunny on after that game. And I've seen some blowouts from John, definitely.
Happy days. I mean, in terms of coaches, I mean, there's certain coaches in the British game that, Brian Noble being one, he's always spoken about on various podcasts, on various productions in terms of his achievements in the game. There's been others after him, Sean Wayne, Tony Smith, the list goes on and on and on. In his own, where would you put John in terms of coaching? I mean, let's be fair. He has got in his arsenal he's had a lot of success. Might not be a multitude of trophies, but sometimes success isn't based on that, is it?
No, it's not. And let's not forget as well, he's not really been charged with coaching what you would class as a team that's destined for silverware. The teams that he has coached and he has got silverware at, it weren't necessarily expected. He's not been at a St Helens or a Wigan as a head coach, and them sort of teams that throughout the sort of 90s, 2000s have been winning trophies. And I think for me, the thing that speaks about him is not only his longevity, but also how he's managed to. I'm not going to say adapt, because I think John were very, very strict on how he saw the game and how he wanted it played, but he were able to adapt through the generations. And I think relating to somebody like a Wayne Bennett, who's done it for as long as what Wayne Bennett has, and again, it's a different context in terms of the actual success trophies wise. But for John to be as successful as he was across the number of clubs that he coached and the divisions that he coached, over the period of time that he's done it, that longevity just speaks for itself. And I don't think there's anybody else really in the UK game that has done it for as long at various clubs as what John did.
Yeah, and of course, what a lot of people will not consider is also his international career as well. Mm. He's not only done it in domestic competitions with domestic sides, but he's represented, I think I'm right in saying, he's represented a multitude of nations that not many other coaches can say. I know, obviously, Wales, England, and France. Yeah. So again, there's not many coaches that can say they've coached 3 national sides.
No, definitely not. It's I guess the achievements that he's had and the accolades that he's had speaks. Like I say, it speaks for himself that how respected he was, not just in the UK but throughout rugby league as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely, and not just that. I mean, again, listening to other podcasts and listening about in terms of some of the tributes that have come in, my mind was jogged in terms of his impact on Paris back in the day. I don't know if I'm sure you're aware of it, but whether you recall it, but by all accounts, when Super League started, Paris, of course, were struggling in season 1. And the Rugby Football League sent John over there to assist, and they stayed up. Which again, I think speaks volumes for the man that the governing body and I think it was Maurice Lindsay turned to John to say, because I think it's fair to say it'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it, had Paris Saint-Germain had gone out of Super League and in season 1, and he was sent over there almost as a mix to fix it. Did of course at Wakefield many times before. It was almost, dare I say it, a Sam Allardyce character in rugby league.
Yeah, and I think maybe that I guess it's one of them things that you can see it as a big accolade that he's got that trust and he's got that respect. But I guess it's one of them things that can potentially hold you back as well from getting some of the, inverted quotes, glamorous jobs. And I certainly think that if you were charged with somebody who you deem as a glamorous club that are due to win things or expected to win things, I'm sure that John would have had a glittering career at one of them clubs. Absolutely.
I mean, obviously he won a Challenge Cup with Hull FC, we know that, but the one that everybody talks about is the one at Sheffield. I remember where I was that day. It won't surprise you to know I was in a pub. I was 20 years old, and nobody gave Sheffield a chance in that final. Nobody. It was a Wigan Warriors side that was littered with Tony Smith, Henry Paul, Chris Radlinski, I think was playing. I think Connolly was still there at that point as well. It was littered with a who's who at the time of Super League in terms of Wigan, of course. And then Sheffield go and beat them by 17 points to 8. I mean, it was just an incredible win. And I've heard John talk about that, and he was very confident that day.
Yeah,
almost like you get a feeling, don't you? It's like we all. The amount of times I've done predictions, just got a feeling today. And you listen to John, and he just had a feeling that they could do it. And boy, I mean, you talk about players would run through brick walls for John. Well, they did that day.
Yeah, they did, and I was actually at the game, and going back to, I guess, the correlation between myself and John, I'd just actually left Sheffield as a player. I've been at the club in the academy and the alliances it was then for a couple of years, and I'd just left in 1998 and went to the final. And I think John said, and I think it was said in the press previous to the game, that John gave his tactics away. He said they were going to kick to Jason Robinson. They were going to put the ball on his head and they were going to challenge him. And he made no secret of the fact what they were going to do. And to have that confidence, I guess, to tell the opposition what you're going to do, is it mind games? Is it a double bluff? Who knows? But knowing John, it's just he had that confidence. It'll have just been 100% all in. That's what we're going to do, and I'm pretty confident that we can achieve what we need to do.
And it's probably one of the most famous finals in the last, certainly in our lifetimes, because it was such a shock. And I think the week after, they got battered by Wigan at home. They got absolutely done by him the week after the final. Not that I don't think John had to give two monkeys at that point, in terms of that, because he got his hands on the silverware. I mean, from your perspective, in your time under John as an assistant, is there anything now, because I'm sure you've reflected a lot over the last 48 hours in terms of your time with John, are there certain memories, are there certain moments that have come up that have put a smile on your face over the last couple of days?
Yeah, it does. It makes you reflect, something when something like this happens, and I guess you go back to, like I said earlier on, like when I first went there and I realised how far off I was. And John was very, very good at getting you to do stuff for him, but also teaching you as well. So he was quite demanding with John to work under at times, because I'm working full time myself at the time, and I still, it's amazing how much stuff I still do now that I did when I first went to Batley that John had me doing in terms of my preparation for stuff, for games, and the reviews and whatnot, and how I make notes, and how I look at my statistics and the patterns and the flow of the game, the number of stuff that I've picked up from John that I now take into the way that I analyse games that we've played or analyse oppositions that we're playing. I was thinking back about how almost a little bit like a little school kid just wanting the teacher to be happy with you that you've done something. And the first bit of a sort of proudness that I had working under John was when he did his previews, and something that I'd given to John as a thing to focus on, he'd put into his preview to show the team. And I can remember the first time that happened, I thought, wow, he's taken that. I've 100% believed that he'd seen that himself and it were going to go in there regardless. But just at that moment in time, I just thought, well, actually, no, he values what I've done. And the more that he trusted you, the more freedom that he gave you as well, the more he allowed you to do. And I think that was the big thing with John, is that once you got his trust, then you were there. And there were a number of stuff that I had to do, I guess, to build that trust, and that he was confident that he could say to me, right, I want you to take that first half hour a session today, or myself and Mocko would do something, and he'd be confident. He'd worked with Mocko for a number of years, so that was already built with Mocko. But for myself coming in, it took a little bit of time for him to get that trust in me, that he knew that my knowledge were developing, all my skill sets were developing, and he could see something in me. And I guess that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is that he actually saw that in me and valued that in me, that he kept me there for 4 years. And the longer I was there, the more stuff he was giving me to do, the more trust that I got, and the more autonomy that I got as well. And certainly developed me beyond recognition as a coach. And like I said, there's still a lot of stuff that I'm doing now that I picked up off John.
So as you're talking, I'm getting the sense that obviously every man makes his own path, but I'm getting the sense that you, Craig Lingard, the coach, clearly have a lot of respect, but also have a lot to be thankful for that time under John.
Oh, mate, 100%. Yeah, I won't be where I am in rugby league today without John's input. Getting that first opportunity to come back and giving me that first step on the ladder, and just because I got that opportunity doesn't mean to say that I am where I am now today. I've done what I've done today in the game because I had that first opportunity. It was almost a little bit like when you say to a kid who gets signed on at 15-year-old, right? You've not made it. You've made the first step. It's what you do now that counts. And the development that he put into me, the attention to detail that he showed in me, and I guess got me to look at certain things in games, either by telling me stuff or me by picking it up off him, and just developing me as a coach, watching how he manages people, watching how he builds things up, and how he reviewed and how he previewed as well. And again, I guess you mirror something what you see, don't you? And it's easy to give a bad review after a win. It's easy to give a positive review after a loss, because you've got to make sure that you're balancing the needs of the team based on how that morale is at that particular time, what that team needs. Do they need a kick at the backside? Do they need an arm around the shoulder? And again, each individual are completely different, and managing each individual is different. And developing them relationships with the players certainly learnt a lot of John about how to do that. But I guess it put me in a position that after the 4 years I had at Batley, when I was guessing on my own, then after John had left, and I didn't know until after the time that I'd applied for the job at Keighley after not getting the Batley job, and I think it was the Rugby League dinner. John went over to the people in charge at Keighley at the time and spoke very, very highly of me and gave a glowing recommendation. I think that certainly went a long way to me getting my first head coach job at Keighley Cougars.
Fantastic. And since your time with John as his assistant, of course, you moved on to Keighley and then obviously onto other things as well. How many times did your paths cross post then?
On a frequent basis, yeah. Obviously, certain things you speak more after certain things. So when I got sacked at Keighley, we were talking off air about this, and when bad news comes, you get a lot of messages, a lot of phone calls straight away within the first sort of 24, 48 hours.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a call off John probably around about a week later. I can still remember where I was around at mum and dad's house, and I went outside and took the call, and John said to me, look, I've left it nearly a week now because I know that everybody will have been ringing you for the first 24, 48 hours, and I want you to know that people are still thinking about you. You're not forgotten about. And I just thought that was just really, really nice, that understanding that after that 48-hour period, when everybody sent me a message or called me or done whatever they need to do, then your phone goes quiet. And then 3-4 days later, you get a call off John just to say, keep your head up, other opportunities will come. You know what I mean? That I guess just a sort of bloke that it was, just knowing what to do and how to do it.
And opportunities did come because you went back to Batley as head coach, and very nearly got yourself some silverware, something that John didn't manage to do at Batley, but very close to that. And again, when you were at Batley, and again that link that you had, he'd been head coach there as well. How much dialogue when you were at Batley did he have with you? Did he have much?
It weren't a massive amount. John weren't that sort of bloke that would be ringing you day in, day out or whatnot. But he would always let you know that anytime you needed to speak about something, anytime certain things might be going on, if you need a chat, he's always there. He did that at Cass, when we were going through some tough times at Cass at the start. He gave me a call and just said, look, don't worry about anything. You're doing all right. Just do what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Just be confident in your own ability, confident in what you're doing is going to work. And it was just that timing of the communication that he almost seemed to know when you needed it, and it weren't doing it for the sake of doing it. He was doing it because he knew there was a need for it at that particular moment in time. And he just understood. I think because he'd maybe been there himself, he understood when he might have needed something and put himself in the other person's position, just a bit of empathy for somebody who might be going through something that he'd been going through, and knowing what that person might particularly need at that moment in time.
What you're describing is a man who had presence of mind. That it's very, very easy to surround yourself with people who are only there in the good times. True friendship, true relationships are there through thick and thin. And the fact that you're saying that he contacted you at key moments in times that probably had a bigger impact on you as well, again, probably speaks volumes for the man, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, mate. And it's it weren't somebody who were on the phone all the time, weren't John? But you knew that if you knew you had the confidence, if any time you needed him for whatever reason, whether it was to catch up and just to chew the fat because you're not seeing him for a while, you'd do that. If it were a ring up and just talk about rugby, or ring up and ask for a little bit of advice or whatever it was, you knew you could do that, and you'd got that confidence. You didn't feel like you're putting on him if you needed to do that. And likewise, as I've just said there, he knew when he needed to call you as well. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that has done that with a lot of other people that he's worked with in the past. I'm sure that they've had them calls from John or them messages from John at key moments where they actually needed them. And I just think he had a real good knack of knowing when to do it and what somebody needed at that particular time.
And, again, what you're describing here is somebody that, if you haven't seen him for a few months, but you passed him in the street, he's the type of man that you'd stop everything and go and have that cup of coffee with. And I think, again, that speaks volumes for any human being that, when you're in their company, the world can stop and you will give time to speak, reminisce, and to just enjoy each other's company. And I don't know him. I'm just living off what you're saying here, and that's the impression I'm getting. That Craig, I spoke to Mark Applegarth earlier. If you bumped into John in the street and he offered you a coffee, you'd probably go along and you'd be there for 2 hours later.
No, definitely. And rugby league's like that. You don't necessarily lose touch. It's that you're not spending every day with somebody. But rugby league's that sort of community that I have it at the Batley ex-players dues, where there's players that I played with in 1998 that I probably see once every 3 or 4 years when I go on the ex-players do, but you pick up straight away. Yeah. And I think rugby league's like that. You don't need to be in touch with people every single day, but when you get back for a drink or a coffee with them, you just start up the conversation like you'd seen them yesterday. And that's, and obviously I had a bit more of a closer relationship with John, but the times when I saw him recently when we were doing commentaries on our games, or I'd seen him at a rugby league event, and straight away it's an handshake and a cuddle and a chat and a coffee and whatever it is, and it's like I say, any time you needed Johnny, we're there for you.
It's crystal clear that rugby league have lost a massive friend in the last 48 hours. That's absolutely crystal, and it's been a privilege, mate, hearing you speak warmly about the man, because, like I say, you're in a privileged position that you knew him very intimately. We didn't, and I think what you've done in this programme is reinforced what we all probably thought. But of course, they always say never meet your heroes. You're never sure in terms of, is the man on screen the man off screen. But I think what you the way you've spoken, it's crystal clear that he was every inch that man.
100%, mate. And I don't think there's many people that have either worked with him or played under him that didn't enjoy it, that have a bad word to say about him. I'm sure there's some people out there that have had for whatever reason a bad experience or two, but I reckon they're in the distinct minority. And certainly the players that played under John at Batley, still when I see them, still laugh and smile and joke about some of the stuff that he said, and reminisce with, I guess, with pride with some of the stuff that we did at Batley at that particular time, getting into the Super 8s and playing away at Edinburgh and playing away at other Super League grounds in that season when we shouldn't have been there. And I think for me, it's not the stuff that he's achieved in rugby league that'll define him. It's the people that he's had the impact on. It's the opportunities that he's given people. It's the impacts that he's had on people's lives that'll last in memory with me. The stuff that he's done for me in terms of my development and the opportunities that he created for me and the belief that he had in me and the development he gave me as well. That's I can't put a price on that.
No, well, you said that he put a word in for you at Keighley. I think if the big man upstairs is listening, there's a lot of people putting in a good word for John, and I'm sure the gates are wide open for him. It's been an absolute privilege talking to you, mate. I know it can't be easy for you. Again, my heartfelt condolences to you, to his family, and everybody who knew him. I've had goosebumps at times listening to you today, and I think legacy of any human being is the minds that they enriched and the hearts that they touched. They said that to Mark Applegarth today, and it's crystal clear that he's left a lot of knowledge behind, and he's left a lot of fond memories as well. God rest his soul. As John would want us to, just a very quick one on this week's fixtures. And of course, if he could say one thing to anybody who's watching this, go and watch Rugby League is probably what he'd be saying to them people today. And this is how you can do it this week. Saturday, the 6th of June, 2:00 kickoff. Midland Hub against take on Whitehaven at 3. It's Goole against Batley. Newcastle take on Hunslet at 4:00. Then on Sunday, the 7th, all 3:00 kickoffs. It's Keighley Rochdale, North Wales London, Salford Doncaster, Swinton against Halifax, Widnes Dewsbury, Workington Town against Barrow Raiders. We don't apologise today. This has been more a celebration of John Kear's life, and rightly so. But in closing for this show, it'd be remiss of us not to just quickly pick out just a couple of games. And Keighley Rochdale, both just outside the playoff places, next to each other in the league. That's got the potential of being a real grinding game that could go either way and could be very, very tight. Yeah,
definitely. I think Rochdale will be maybe slight favourites for me after the win the previous week, and maybe back onto a little bit of confidence with a bit of form. And Keith playing okay themselves, a little bit hit and miss at times of Keith, getting some good victories and maybe losing some games that you'd expect them to win. So I guess it depends on which Keith side turns up. I'm veering slightly towards Rochdale. I'm slightly more consistent.
Should be a good game. And then, again, when we started doing this at the start of the season, Swinton, Halifax would have probably have had as a slam dunk. But all of a sudden, Swinton really starting to get a little bit of momentum, doing very, very well. They're going up against the Halifax side that's been a bit hit and miss. That should be a good game as well at 3:00 on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it will. I think, like I said, Swinton playing well now, getting some much needed victories and getting up plenty of confidence as well, learning how to win games. And that's a big thing, is that once you learn how to win games, it becomes a habit. And over the last sort of 3-4 games, it's been a habit for them to win. Is it enough to get over Halifax? I'm not sure. I'm going to go with Halifax on that one to get back to winning ways.
It'd be one of those where we didn't see it coming. Big scalp. We've had a few of them this year. We've had a few where we've sat there and gone, poof, didn't see that one coming. You just never know. And then perhaps the other one that's probably looks on paper to be a really interesting tie, a close tie potentially, Widnes Dewsbury. That looks a good game at Widnes on Sunday.
Yeah, it does. I think maybe home advantage will be key on that one as well, and Widnes on a little bit of form. I guess we'll see which team responds and reacts better to having the week off. I think some teams like the week off. Some teams don't like the week off. I know where we are at the minute. We've got 2 weeks off. I think we needed that to try and get some bodies back on the field, and I'm really pleased about that. But, you know, Widnes on a bit of form consistently, has a bet done them good or not, we'll see.
Absolutely. Who do you play in a week's time when you're back on the field?
We play Barrow away.
You're Barrow, right? Okay. Of course, they're at Workington. So something tells me you're not going to make the pilgrimage to Cumbria to watch that live, I'm guessing.
I'll wait till it goes up on the Rugby League on Monday morning and download it and watch it then.
Go on the driving range. You might need to after your game. Happy days. Look, mate, I know those type of shows are never going to be easy when somebody's passed who you admired and worked alongside so much. But hopefully that last half an hour has also brought a smile to your face in terms of those memories that will live you here for the rest of your life. And I'm sure that as he was in life, he will be in depth. He'll be watching you. So don't let your standards slip.
No, I won't. And I guess just retouching on John, one thing that always made me laugh about him, and I think it was synonymous throughout the game of he were a typical Yorkshireman. He were very, very thrifty. And I always remember it when my last session at Batley, we went down to a local restaurant near us for a feed, and I was driving. I needed to go somewhere, and it was the first time in 4 years that he'd offered to buy me a drink. And I was driving, so I couldn't drink, and I was absolutely devastated that I couldn't make him go to the bar and get me a Guinness. So, yeah, the first time in 4 years he'd offered to buy me a pint, and his advice was always when you're coaching, if they want to get rid of you, make them pay you to leave. Never walk away for free.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, I'm sure that when you're in the 19th tomorrow, when you played your round of golf, maybe you'll raise your pint of Guinness up into the sky and think fondly of him, mate. It's been a privilege to be. It's always a privilege to be in your company, but even more so tonight, hearing those wonderful tales about John. We'll both be back, of course, to talk Rugby League in a week's time. All things from officially round number 14 in the Championship. But on behalf of me and Craig, like I say, raise a glass to a great man that we've lost, a great friend of Rugby League. He will be missed, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.